Council Leader Prime Zalthek stood before the assembled representatives of 12 species, holding a data crystal containing the complete analysis of the human battle recording. The meeting chamber aboard the flagship Unity had never hosted a briefing quite like this one. What had begun as routine preparation for first contact with a primitive species had become something entirely different. Fellow council members, what I am about to share will fundamentally change our understanding of the galactic situation, he began, activating the holographic display that showed the 3 human ships engaging the Devourer vessels. This recording has revealed that we have been completely wrong about humanity. The assembled representatives leaned forward with interest. Most had expected this briefing to cover basic human capabilities and potential trade opportunities. The presence of military analysts and xenoarchaeologists suggested something far more significant. The ships you see here belong to Iron Squadron, an elite human unit that has been fighting a secret war against the Devourers for over 3 years. Zalthek continued, highlighting the damage patterns on the enemy vessels. Not only have they been engaging the most dangerous enemy in galactic history, they have been winning. Representative Thelanya of the Crystalline Consortium was the first to speak. Prime Zalthek, surely you cannot be suggesting that these humans have succeeded where 17 advanced civilizations failed. The Devourers wiped out species far more technologically sophisticated than humanity appears to be. That is exactly what I am suggesting, Zalthek replied, transmitting the complete analysis files to all council members. In the past 3 years, human forces have engaged Devourer vessels in over 30 separate encounters. Not only have they survived these engagements, they have forced the enemy to retreat on multiple occasions. Dr. Kethra stepped forward to provide additional context. Our analysis indicates that the Devourers have been operating in the outer reaches of human space for several years, possibly conducting reconnaissance for a larger invasion. The humans detected this threat and responded with a level of tactical innovation and strategic thinking that exceeds anything in our military databases. The holographic display shifted to show the impossible maneuvers performed by the human ships. During the recorded battle, Representative Vordak of the Heavy Worlds Alliance, himself a veteran of numerous military campaigns, studied the tactical data with growing amazement. These acceleration forces should have killed every organic being aboard those vessels, he observed. How did they survive such maneuvers? Human engineering capabilities exceed our previous assessments, Sub-Commander Torvin explained. They have developed modifications to their ships that allow them to operate under conditions that would destroy conventional vessels. More importantly, they have developed tactics that turn their apparent technological disadvantages into strategic advantages. Representative Melaria of the Peaceful Gardens spoke next, her telepathic species having always favored diplomatic solutions over military ones. If these humans have truly been fighting the Devourers, why did they not request assistance from the galactic community? Surely they must have known that other species had experience with this enemy, because they did not. No, we existed, Zalthek replied simply. Human space exploration has been limited to their immediate stellar neighborhood. They encountered the Devourer threat before making contact with any other sapient species, and they chose to face it alone rather than flee. This revelation struck the council members with particular force. Every other species had encountered the Devourers as part of a larger galactic community with access to shared intelligence and combined military resources. The humans had faced the same threat in complete isolation and somehow found a way to not just survive, but to push back. Show them the personnel files, Rayon suggested, and Zalthek activated biographical displays for Morrison, Foster, and Clark. Jake Morrison, the human captain, single-handedly defended a civilian evacuation for 6 hours against overwhelming devourer forces, he explained. Amy Foster invented an entirely new form of space combat doctrine that has revolutionized human military thinking. Ben Clark developed engineering modifications that allow human ships to perform impossible maneuvers while maintaining structural integrity. These are not random military officers, he continued. These are the greatest heroes of human civilization, and we just watch them conduct their final mission. The 3 most legendary human warriors died protecting a civilian convoy, while we debated whether their species was ready for contact. The weight of this revelation settled over the council, chamber like a heavy blanket. Representative after representative reviewed the tactical analysis, personnel files, and battle recordings, each coming to the same inescapable conclusion. Humanity was not a primitive species struggling with basic spaceflight. They were hardened, veterans of the most difficult war in galactic history. "What does this mean for our first contact protocols?" asked Representative Sektar of the nomadic fleets, whose people had survived the Devourer War only by fleeing to the empty spaces between star systems. "It means we approach them as equals," Zalthek declared. "More than equals. It means we approach them as the species that accomplished what none of us could do alone. They fought the Devourers to a standstill and protected not just themselves, but every living being in this part of the galaxy. The Council voted unanimously to completely revise their first contact plans. Instead of the condescending approach originally designed for a primitive species, they would send their most respected diplomats with an offer of alliance and mutual support. Instead of offering guidance and protection, they would offer gratitude and assistance. The humans have earned the right to be treated as full partners in the galactic community, Zalthek announced as the formal vote concluded. Their sacrifice and achievements have protected us all from a threat we did not even know had returned. Preparations began immediately for a diplomatic mission unlike any in galactic history. The Council would approach humanity not as potential subjects or junior partners, but as proven defenders of civilization. They would offer technology, resources, and military support to a species that had already demonstrated their worthiness through 3 years of impossible victories. "There is one final consideration," Dr. Kethra added as the meeting concluded. "If Iron Squadron was destroyed in their final mission, as the evidence suggests, then humanity has lost their most experienced Devourer fighters. The enemy may use this opportunity to launch a larger offensive while human forces reorganize. All the more reason to make contact immediately," Zalthek decided. "If the Devourers return in greater numbers, humanity will need every ally they can get. And after what we have seen, we need them as much as they need us." The Zephyrian Council's understanding of the galaxy had changed completely in the span of a few days. What they thought was empty space beyond the frontier was actually a battlefield where heroes had fought and died to protect everyone. What they thought was a primitive species was actually their salvation, the only force that had successfully stood against the return of galactic extinction. As the Council ships prepared for their historic journey to human space, every member carried with them the memory of 3 warriors who had given everything to protect people they had never met. Jake Morrison, Amy Foster, and Ben Clark had become legends not just to their own species, but to every species in the galaxy, whether they knew it or not. The battle recording that had started as routine intelligence gathering had become something far more precious. the final testament of heroes whose sacrifice had saved the galaxy. Sub-Commander Rayon specialized in military history and had spent decades studying the great warriors and battles that shaped galactic civilization. When the Council asked her to research the human officers visible in the battle recording, she expected to find basic biographical information about unknown military personnel from a primitive species. Instead, she discovered she had been watching Legends. Council Leader Prime Zalthek, "I need to meet with you immediately," she transmitted, her voice barely containing her excitement and disbelief. "The humans in the battle recording are not random military officers. They are some of the most famous warriors in recent galactic history." Zalthek's response was immediate. "Explain." "Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Liberty is the ghost of Kepler Station," Rayon announced, transmitting historical records to support her claim. 3 years ago, a single human defended an isolated mining facility against overwhelming enemy forces for 6 hours while 50,000 civilians evacuated to safety. The facility was completely destroyed, and the defender was presumed dead. That defender was Jake Morrison. The historical record showed grainy surveillance footage from Kepler Station's final hours. A lone human ship, heavily damaged and operating on minimal power, held off wave after wave of enemy attacks while transport vessels fled the system. The enemy forces had been identified at the time as unknown hostiles, but the ship configurations now clearly matched Devourer assault vessels. "One man held off Devourers for 6 hours," Zalthek repeated in amazement. "That should have been impossible. How did he survive?" "According to the evacuation records, his ship was destroyed along with the station," Rayon replied. "Everyone assumed he died in the explosion. But if this battle recording is recent, then somehow Jake Morrison escaped and has been fighting Devourers ever since." She continued her briefing with even more startling revelations. "Lieutenant Amy Foster, the tactical officer, is the creator of what human military communications call the Foster Doctrine. Based on intercepted training materials, this appears to be a revolutionary approach to space combat that has allowed outnumbered human forces to achieve victory against superior enemies in 12 separate engagements. The Foster Doctrine, as described in human military files, involved using environmental factors and precise timing to overcome technological disadvantages. It required split-second calculations and perfect coordination between all crew members, exactly the kind of tactics they had witnessed in the battle recording. 12 victories against superior enemies, Zalthek mused, reviewing the tactical analysis from the recording. Now we understand how she achieved such impossible accuracy. She was not just a good tactical officer, she was the inventor of an entirely new form of warfare. Rayon saved the most impressive revelation for last. Ben Clark, the chief engineer, designed what humans call the Clark drive modifications. These are engine enhancements that allow human ships to operate at power levels that would destroy conventional vessels. According to technical specifications I found in their databases, Clark drive modifications can increase engine output by up to 40% while maintaining structural integrity. That explains how they survived those impossible acceleration forces, Dr. Kethra added, joining the conversation through holographic projection. They were not just brave or lucky. They had technology specifically designed to let them perform maneuvers that would kill other species. The 3 officers in the battle recording were not unknown military personnel conducting routine operations. They were the most legendary human, warriors of their generation, each one famous for achievements that had seemed impossible until now. The fact that they were working together suggested something far more significant than a random encounter with enemy forces. Cross-reference. Their service records, Zalthek ordered. I want to know if these three have operated together before. The search revealed the existence of something called Iron Squadron, an elite human unit that had been formed specifically to engage the most dangerous threats facing their species. Jake Morrison, Amy Foster, and Ben Clark had been its core members, along with the crews of their 3 ships. Their mission records, though heavily classified, suggested they had been operating in the deepest reaches of space for over 2 years. Iron Squadron conducted 18 separate missions against unknown hostiles, Rayon reported, reading from partially decoded human military files. They are credited with protecting major shipping lanes, defending civilian populations, and conducting deep reconnaissance in hostile territory. Their casualty rate was remarkably low, despite engaging in what appear to have been suicide missions. The picture that emerged was of a small group of exceptional humans who had taken on the impossible task of fighting the Devourers, while the rest of their species remained largely unaware of the threat. They had developed new technologies, invented new tactics, and achieved victories that military experts would have considered fantasy. But if they were so successful, what happened to them? Yilnara asked. The battle recording shows them engaging 3 Devourer vessels. Did they survive that encounter? Torvin, who had been analyzing the tactical situation in the recording, provided a sobering assessment. Based on the number of enemy contacts and the strategic positioning, this appears to have been their final mission. The 3 Devourer vessels were likely part of a larger force, and Iron Squadron was conducting a delaying action to protect something behind them. A convoy of civilian transports, Dr. Kethra added, pointing to energy signatures visible. In the background of the recording, there were dozens of ships fleeing through that system while Iron Squadron held the line. The realization hit the council members simultaneously. They had not been watching a routine military engagement or even a significant battle. They had been watching the final stand of the greatest human heroes, 3 legends making their last sacrifice to save countless innocent lives. The battle recording ends with the Devourer vessels retreating, Vextar pointed out. Iron Squadron succeeded in their mission, but at what cost? Further analysis of the recording's final minutes revealed the truth. The 3 human ships were heavily damaged and operating on minimal power when the enemy withdrew. Their weapons were depleted, their engines were failing, and their hulls showed critical structural damage. They won, but they had nothing left, Rayon concluded, studying the final status reports visible in the recording. This was their last victory, achieved at the cost of everything they had. The Zephyrian Council found themselves in the unusual position of mourning heroes they had never known existed. Jake Morrison, Amy Foster, and Ben Clark had spent their final years fighting a secret war to protect not just humanity, but every living being in the galaxy. They had achieved impossible victories, saved countless lives, and died as they had lived, standing between civilization and extinction. We need to change our entire approach to first contact, Zalthek decided after reviewing all the evidence. The humans are not a primitive species in need of guidance. They are battle-tested warriors who have been protecting us all from the greatest threat in galactic history. We owe them respect, gratitude, and whatever assistance we can provide. The discovery of Iron Squadron's true identity transformed the Council's understanding of humanity from potential subjects to potential saviors. The battle recording they had intercepted was not just military intelligence, it was the final chapter. in the story of legends who had held the line when no one else could. Dr. Kethra had been analyzing alien ship designs for over 40 years. Her expertise in xenotechnology was unmatched in the Zephyrian Council, and she had personally cataloged the remains of 17 extinct civilizations. When Vexitar called her to examine the unknown vessels from the human battle recording, she expected another routine identification task. What she found instead made her hands shake as she worked. "Run the comparison again," she told her analysis computer, staring at the dark angular ships on her main display. The computer had already processed the request 6 times, but she needed to be absolutely certain before reporting her findings. "To the Council. Comparison complete," the computer announced. "Design elements match archived records with 97.4% certainty. Classification, Devourer-class assault vessels, Mark 7 configuration." Kethra closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had hoped the computer was wrong, but the evidence was undeniable. The ships in the human battle recording belonged to the Devourers, the machine intelligence that had wiped out entire star systems before vanishing into the void 3,000 years ago. She immediately opened a priority communication channel. "To Council Leader Prime Zalthek." This information could not wait for the regular briefing schedule. "Prime Zalthek, this is Dr. Kethra," she began, her voice tight with urgency. "I need to speak with you immediately about the human battle recording. We have a significant problem." The council leader's holographic image appeared within minutes, showing his reptilian features creased with concern. Zalthek had been in power during the last confirmed Devourer sighting, and he understood the implications better than most. "What have you found, Doctor?" he asked, settling into his communication chamber aboard the council ship. "The enemy vessels in the human recording are Devourer machines," Kethra replied without preamble. "Mark 7 assault vessels, specifically designed for engaging and destroying spacefaring civilizations. The humans were not conducting a training exercise or fighting pirates. They encountered the most dangerous enemy in galactic history." Zalthek's expression darkened as he processed this information. The Devourers had been responsible for the complete extinction of 17 known species, including several that were far more technologically advanced than the humans appeared to be. The machines had swept through entire sectors of space, consuming everything in their path before mysteriously disappearing. "Are you certain of this identification?" he asked, though he could see the certainty in Kethra's expression. "Absolutely certain," she confirmed, transmitting her analysis data to his personal files. "The hull configuration, weapon placement, and energy signatures all match archived records from the massacre of Kepler-7. These are definitely Devourer vessels." "But that is impossible," Zalthek protested. "The Devourers have been dormant for 3 millennia. Every deep space monitoring station in the galaxy watches for signs of their return. How could they engage human forces without triggering any warning systems?" Kethra had been wondering the same thing. The Devourer War had ended with the complete disappearance of the machine intelligence, but the surviving species had maintained constant vigilance ever since. Early warning networks, automated monitoring stations, and deep space patrols all watched for any sign of Devourer activity. "I believe they may have been operating in human space for some time without our knowledge," she said, pulling up star charts showing the location where the battle had occurred. "This sector is on the far edge of known space, beyond our regular monitoring range. If the Devourers were conducting reconnaissance or limited operations in that area, we might not have detected them." The implications were terrifying. If the Devourers had returned and were operating in human territory, It meant the galaxy faced the same threat that had previously required the combined efforts of dozens of species to merely survive. And this time, the humans were facing them, alone. "We need to analyze the entire battle recording again," Zaltek decided. "If the humans encountered devourers and survived, we need to understand how they did it. No species has ever successfully engaged devourer forces in direct combat and lived to report the encounter." Within hours, the Council's best military analysts were reviewing every second of the human battle footage. Commander Vextar and Science Officer Yilnara joined the expanded analysis team, bringing their preliminary findings about the impossible human tactics they had witnessed. Sub-Commander Torvin, the Council's leading expert on devourer combat capabilities, provided historical context that made the human achievement even more remarkable. The Mark VII assault vessels shown in this recording were responsible for the destruction of the Altarian defense fleet, he explained to the assembled analysts. 47 advanced warships, crewed by one of the most militarily sophisticated species in the galaxy, were completely destroyed in less than 30 minutes. The Altarians never scored a single hit on the Devourer vessels. Yet these humans not only hit them, but forced them to retreat, Vexitar observed, highlighting the damage visible on the enemy ships as they fled the battle zone. "How is that possible?" asked Yilnara. "The humans appear to be a relatively primitive species. Their technology is centuries behind what the Altarians possessed when they were destroyed." Torvin studied the human ships more carefully, analyzing their weapons and defensive systems. "Their technology may be primitive by our standards, but their tactics are unlike anything I have seen before. Look at how they use their environment, how they coordinate their movements, how they anticipate enemy actions." The team spent days analyzing every aspect of the human combat performance. They studied Captain Morrison's command decisions, Lieutenant Foster's targeting accuracy, and Ben Clark's impossible engineering feats. Each new discovery raised more questions about human capabilities and their previous encounters with the Devourers. This was not their first engagement, Dr. Kethra concluded after reviewing the crew's calm professionalism under extreme pressure. "These humans have fought Devourers before and survived, multiple times, based on their coordination and tactical responses. That changes everything," Zalthek said when presented with this analysis. "If the humans have been fighting a secret war against the Devourers, then our entire understanding of the galactic situation is wrong. We assume they were an insignificant species struggling with basic spaceflight, but they may actually be seasoned veterans of the most dangerous conflict in galactic history." The Council leader authorized a comprehensive review of all human transmissions and activities detected over the past several years. Teams of analysts began searching for evidence of other Devourer encounters, looking for clues about the scope and duration of this hidden conflict. What they found confirmed their worst fears and highest hopes. Scattered references in human military communications suggested ongoing operations against what they called unknown hostiles in remote star systems. Mentions of evacuation procedures, convoy protection, and defensive strategies that made no sense unless the humans were facing an existential threat. They have been protecting not just themselves, but the entire galaxy, Kethra realized as she reviewed the data. The humans have been fighting the Devourers in the outer reaches of space, preventing them from advancing into the populated sectors where our species live. The Zephyrian Council found themselves facing a complete reversal of their assumptions about humanity. Instead of a primitive species in need of guidance, The humans appeared to be experienced warriors who had been holding the line against galactic extinction, while the rest of the galaxy remained blissfully unaware of the danger. The battle recording they had intercepted was not a training exercise or a minor skirmish. It was evidence of a war that would determine the survival of every living being in the galaxy, fought by a species that had somehow found a way to stand against impossible odds and win. The battle began exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds into the recording. Vextar had watched the timestamp carefully as the three unknown vessels opened fire on the human fleet. What happened next made him question both his understanding of physics and his analysis equipment. Captain Morrison's voice cut through the bridge chatter with calm authority. All ships, execute pattern Delta 7. Foster, return fire as soon as you have a clean shot. Clark, I need everything the engines can give us. The USS Liberty suddenly accelerated at an angle that should have been impossible for a ship of its size and mass. Yilnara quickly ran the calculations on her secondary screen, checking the math twice before speaking. Vexitar, look at these acceleration readings, she said, her voice tight with disbelief. The Liberty just pulled 12.7 gravities in a lateral shift. That should have turned every human on that ship into paste against the bulkheads. Vextar paused the recording and examined the data himself. The numbers were clear and unmistakable. The human ship had performed a maneuver that would kill any known organic species, yet the crew continued functioning normally. He could see Captain Morrison still standing on his bridge, giving orders as if nothing unusual had happened. Equipment malfunction, he suggested, though he did not believe it himself. Our sensors might be miscalibrating the human ship's movements. Negative, Yilnara replied, pulling up additional data streams. I have readings from multiple sensors plus the video evidence. The humans are definitely pulling forces that should be lethal to organic life. They resumed the playback and watched as Lieutenant Amy Foster coordinated the return fire. Her targeting was unlike anything either Zephyrian had seen before. Instead of the standard predictive firing patterns used by most species, she seemed to anticipate exactly where the enemy vessels would be several seconds in the future. Target the lead vessel, forward weapons array, Foster commanded. Firing. Solution locked. All batteries fire on my mark. The Liberty's weapons discharged in a coordinated pattern that struck the enemy ship precisely where Foster had predicted it would be. The dark vessel staggered under the impact, its smooth hull showing signs of damage for the first time since the engagement began. How did she know where to aim? Vexitar asked, rewinding the sequence to study it again. The enemy ship was executing evasive maneuvers. There was no way to predict its exact position. Yilnara was already running trajectory analysis on the enemy vessel's movement pattern. After several minutes of calculation, she looked up with an expression of amazement. She did not predict where it would be. She predicted where it would try to go, then calculated where it would actually end up after accounting for momentum, engine response time, and gravitational influences from nearby asteroids. That level of calculation requires massive computing power, Vexitar protested. The human brain could not possibly process that much data in real time. Yet she did it, Yilnara pointed out, highlighting the successful weapons impact on her screen. Watch her do it again. The recording continued, showing Foster repeating her impossible targeting accuracy multiple times. Each shot landed exactly where it was supposed to, despite the enemy vessel's increasingly desperate evasive maneuvers. The other two human ships were following similar tactics, their weapons officers displaying the same uncanny ability to predict enemy movements. Meanwhile, Ben Clark was performing his own impossible feat in engineering. The Liberty's engines were running far beyond their design specifications, yet somehow remaining stable. Power output readings showed levels that should have caused immediate reactor failure. "Captain, I can give you more speed if you need it." Clark's voice came through the bridge speakers. "The engines are running at 127%, but I can push them to 140 if necessary." 127%, Vextar repeated in disbelief. No species runs their engines above 90% of capacity, except in absolute emergencies. Even then, it usually results in catastrophic failure within minutes. Yilnara checked the timestamp on the recording. They have been running at these levels for over 30 minutes now. Their engines should have exploded by the 10-minute mark. The camera angle shifted to show Clark in the engineering section, calmly monitoring his systems while making constant adjustments to power distribution and cooling systems. He moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before, making complex modifications to critical systems while under enemy fire. "Rerouting auxiliary power to forward shields," Clark announced over the communication system. "I am bypassing 3 safety protocols to get you an extra 15% protection on the bow sections." Bypassing safety protocols during combat, Vextar noted, making entries in his analysis log. This suggests either extreme desperation or complete confidence in their engineering abilities. The battle continued with the human ships performing maneuvers that defied every known principle of space combat. They used gravitational assist from nearby asteroids to change direction at impossible angles, turned their ships in ways that should have torn the hulls apart, and maintained weapons fire accuracy that required computational abilities beyond anything in Zephyrian databases. Captain Morrison coordinated the entire engagement with the skill of someone who had fought similar battles many times before. His orders were precise and immediate, as if he could see several moves ahead in the tactical situation. "Liberty actual to all ships," Morrison announced. "Enemy vessels are trying to flank us using the asteroid field. Execute maneuver Gamma 12. Use the rocks as cover and force them into a crossfire pattern." The 3 human ships suddenly broke formation and dove into the asteroid field at speeds that made Vextar grip his analysis chair. They were moving fast enough that any collision with space debris would destroy them instantly, yet they navigated between the rocks with perfect precision. "This is madness," Yilnara whispered, watching the ships thread through gaps barely wider than their hulls. "They are flying through an asteroid field at combat speeds. One miscalculation and they die, but there were no miscalculations." The human pilots, guided by Foster's targeting data and Morrison's tactical planning, emerged from the asteroid field in perfect position to catch the enemy vessels in a devastating crossfire. The dark ships, caught between the 3 human vessels, and unable to maneuver in the confined space, took heavy damage from multiple directions. "Enemy vessels are retreating," Foster reported, her voice still calm, despite having just executed tactics that should have been impossible. "Should we pursue?" "Negative," Morrison replied. "Let them go. We have accomplished our mission and protected the shipping lanes. All ships report damage and casualties." The responses that came back made both Zephyrian analysts lean forward in surprise. Despite the impossible maneuvers and the intense combat, casualties were minimal and damage was manageable. The humans had fought a battle that should have destroyed their ships and killed their crews, yet emerged relatively unscathed. "How is this possible?" Vextar asked, reviewing the entire engagement from multiple camera angles. "Everything they should have resulted in death or destruction, yet they succeeded with minimal losses. Yilnara was studying the enemy vessels as they retreated into deep space. More importantly, what were those ships and why were they operating in human space? Their technology appears to be far advanced beyond anything the humans should be capable of fighting. The recording continued for several more minutes, showing the human crews conducting post-battle damage assessment and casualty reports. Their professionalism and calm demeanor suggested this was routine for them, just another day of impossible combat against superior enemies. As the video ended, both Zephyrian officers sat in silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. Everything they thought they knew about human capabilities had just been proven wrong. These were not primitive beings struggling with basic spaceflight. These were warriors who could perform miracles under pressure and win battles against impossible odds. The question now was what else they had been wrong about regarding this species. Commander Vextar adjusted his viewing screen and leaned back in his analysis chair. The intercepted transmission had been floating through space for weeks before their deep space monitors caught it. Another human military recording, probably some basic training exercise or fleet maneuvers. The Zephyrian Council needed to understand human capabilities before making first contact, and these intercepted videos were perfect for that purpose. Science Officer Yilnara entered the analysis chamber carrying a data pad filled with preliminary reports. She had been studying human transmissions for months now, trying to piece together their technological level and military structure. Most of what they found suggested humans were a young species, barely capable of interstellar travel, with primitive weapons and basic tactical knowledge. "What do we have this time?" Vexitar asked, without looking away from his screen. The video was already loaded and ready to play. It showed 3 human ships in what appeared to be deep space, far from any major star system. "Standard fleet exercise from the look of it," Yilnara replied, settling into her own analysis station. 3 vessels, medium size by human standards. The lead ship identifies itself as USS Liberty under the command of someone called Captain Jake Morrison. The other 2 are support vessels with smaller crews. Vextar nodded and started the playback. The image quality was decent, clearly recorded from the bridge of the Liberty. The human captain appeared on screen, a middle-aged male with short brown hair and what humans called a beard. He was speaking to his crew in their strange language, which their translation systems had mostly figured out by now. "All stations report ready, Captain," came a voice from someone off-screen. The camera angle showed other humans at various control stations, all wearing matching blue uniforms with insignia that the Zephyrians had learned indicated rank and specialization. Tactical Officer Amy Foster, reporting weapon systems online, announced a female human with blonde hair tied back in what appeared to be a military style. She was young by human standards, probably in her 20s, but carried herself with the confidence of someone experienced in combat operations. "Engineering reports all systems green," called out another voice. The camera panned briefly to show a dark-haired male human at a console covered in what looked like engine readouts and power distribution displays. This was presumably Ben Clark, the chief engineer based on the uniform markings. Vexitar paused the recording and looked at Yilnara. "Seems routine so far. Standard crew positions, normal pre-exercise communications. What makes this one interesting?" Yilnara pulled up her analysis notes. "The location is unusual. They are operating in what our star charts show as completely empty space, far from any human colonies or shipping lanes. Also, The energy signatures we detected from the transmission suggest whatever happened here involved significant weapons discharge and engine strain. Combat exercise, then, Vextar concluded. Probably testing new tactics or weapon systems against simulated enemies. The humans seem to enjoy these war games. They resumed the playback. Captain Morrison was now addressing his entire crew through the ship's communication system. His voice carried the tone of someone who had given many similar speeches before, confident but serious. Crew of the Liberty, we have enemy contacts approaching our position. 3 unknown vessels. Configuration not matching any known designs in our database. They do not respond to hails and appear to be on an intercept course. We will engage as necessary to protect the convoy routes behind us. Vextar and Yilnara exchanged glances. This did not sound like a training exercise anymore. The captain's words suggested real enemy contact, but that made no sense. Human space was relatively small and well mapped. There were no known hostile species in their territory, and certainly nothing that would require military intervention. Unknown. Configuration, Yilnara repeated thoughtfully. Perhaps they encountered some sort of automated defense system left behind by an ancient civilization. Our surveys show several dead systems in that region of space. The video continued showing the human crew preparing for battle. Amy Foster was coordinating with other tactical officers, planning firing solutions and defensive maneuvers. Ben Clark was rerouting power to critical systems and preparing the engines for what he called emergency protocols. The entire crew moved with practiced efficiency that spoke of real combat experience. Enemy vessels now visible on forward display, announced someone from the bridge crew. The main view screen showed 3 approaching ships that made both Zephyrian analysts pause their note-taking. The vessels were unlike anything in their extensive databases. They were dark, angular things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their design was both elegant and menacing, with smooth curves broken by sharp weapon projections. I do not recognize that design, Vextar admitted, rewinding the footage to get a better look. Run a comparison against all known ship types in our database. Yilnara was already working on it, her fingers dancing across the control interface as she called up thousands of ship designs from across the galaxy. The analysis computer churned through the data, comparing hull shapes, engine configurations, and weapon placements. After several minutes, it returned a result that made both officers lean forward in surprise. No matches found, the computer announced in its neutral voice. Design elements do not correspond to any known spacefaring civilization in current databases. This was troubling news. The Zephyrian Council maintained the most comprehensive database of galactic civilizations and their technologies. If these ships were not in their records, it meant either the humans had encountered something completely new or something very old that had been forgotten. Back on the recording, Captain Morrison was issuing orders to his fleet. All ships, maintain formation but be ready to break on my command. These vessels are not responding to any communication attempts, and their approach vector suggests hostile intent. Foster, what do our sensors tell us about their capabilities? Lieutenant Foster's reply was crisp and professional. Unknown power source, Captain. Energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. Hull composition appears to be some sort of advanced alloy, and I am detecting what look like weapon ports along their forward sections. Estimated firepower is significant. Engineering. Can we outrun them if necessary? Morrison asked his chief engineer. Ben Clark's response was immediate. Not in a straight line, sir, but I can give you options if you need them. The engines are running hot already, but I can push them past safety limits if required. Vexitar paused the recording again. This conversation was becoming more interesting by the minute. The humans were clearly facing something unknown and potentially dangerous, yet their responses suggested this was not their first encounter with unusual threats. Their calm professionalism under pressure was noteworthy for such a supposedly primitive species. "Continue monitoring and analysis," he told Yilnara. "I want to know everything about those enemy vessels. Ship design, weapon types, movement patterns, anything that might tell us what the humans were really facing out there." As they prepared to resume the playback, both officers found themselves more invested in the outcome than they had expected. What had started as routine analysis of a training exercise was becoming something much more significant. The humans were about to engage an unknown enemy, and the Zephyrian Council was about to learn something important about their future first. Contact species. The recording continued, showing the 3 human ships moving into what appeared to be combat formation as the mysterious enemy vessels closed the distance between them.